determining if figures are congruent and related by a transformation. All right, so in this one, we're given 2 problems per page, it looks like, or 2 sections per page. And we just need to go through and check the boxes that are correct. So I'm going to check yes or no. And then I'm going to go down here and I'm going to check which transformation will map figure A to figure B. So what do I need to do to get from A to B? Now, if we're clicking no, if they're different shapes, then there's nothing that can map one to the other. Now, by different shapes, I mean completely different shapes. If they're the same shape but a different size, we may be able to dilate it. But in this case, I don't even see dilate as an option. I see translate, reflect, and rotate. So those 3 are our transformations that don't change anything. Translate's just about moving it right, left, up, or down. Reflect has to do with like a mirror image, like flipping it over. And rotate has to do with turning things. So I don't see dilate as an option here. So if they're not exactly the same size and shape, and you click no because they're not congruent, because that's the definition of congruent, then you don't have to choose down here. You click none of the above or none of these because none of them will work. So if we go down here, so this one, they're actually giving you this nice little background. So translate, they're just showing this bean shape moving down or the bean shape moving to the left here. Reflection, so they're showing the arrow that it's flipping. So it's going from top to bottom like that. Or you can flip it from right to left, that direction. And then rotation, they're showing that all it's doing is turning. So if I take my hand and I turn it, which I know that's kind of hard to do on the camera here, my arms don't do that very well, but we're just turning a figure, or you can turn it back the other way. So one or the other. So those are just our 3 transformations that we're focusing on. So for figure B, what they're showing is it does look like I can rotate it and it will land right on top of B, and I'm just rotating it 90 degrees here. So that is possible. So yes, they're congruent, and I can check the side lengths here too. So I have one side length to one side length. Then I have it's too tall, it's too tall. Then it goes across and it's 3, and then it's 3, and then I can check that this has the same slope here. So I can confirm that they are congruent by checking the side lengths. But I can rotate one to the other. Figure C and D, so with this one, it looks very much so like I just took figure C and I flipped it down. So, and it's harder for me to do that with my hands here. So pretend like my thumbs are in the right spot. And I'm just going to take my hand and I'm flipping it down like this. So to have that true going down, I should have my hands in the same position like this, and I flip it straight down like that. Okay. So that does look like we can reflect it right over the x-axis and it will land on there. So they say yes, and then they rotated it 90 degrees counterclockwise, backwards. And then yes, again, we can do this one and we just reflect it over the x-axis. So we just have to decide, are they congruent, yes or no? And then what do we need to do to get it from one to the other? All right, so let's go ahead and start. Okay, so these 2 figures, and this actually is pretty much identical to what we just did. So it does in fact look like if I want to go from A to B, so this top one to the bottom one, I would just flip it down. So I would literally take A and just flip it over, which is super easy. And I just need to make sure, so this is 2 above the x-axis, this is 2 below. So the x-axis is my reflection line, because there should be a line between what you're reflecting, and you should be the same distance from that line. So if I took my hands and I reflected it, but I went way over here, and the line is right next to this hand, well, that's not a true reflection. I reflected it, and then I scooted it over, which is a translation. So you just have to be careful about how you're doing it. But with this one, it is just a reflection. We just flipped it right down over the x-axis. So yes, they're congruent. And I reflected A over the x-axis. All right, so for this one, it doesn't look like a reflection, because remember, a reflection, they should be backwards from each other. In this case, it looks like I took one and I just scooted over. That's called a translation. And they do look exactly the same size and shape. So yes, they are congruent. And again, you can count all the sides, just to confirm, and you can check the slope if you're unsure if they're congruent. All the sides should be the same length. And if there is a slope here, it should have the same slope. That makes sure that this side length would land on top of this other side. So what we want to do is translate it. Let's see, we're going from C to D. So we're going from the gray figure to the blue figure. So we moved it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I kept counting because I started on this one. I want to make sure I land on that same point on the other figure. So I go 1, 2, 3. If I stopped, that's not right. 4, 5. I need to go all the way to the point that I started on. So I started on this corner. I need to stop on the same corner. So I translated it 5 units left. So let's see. Translate figure C, not down. Translate figure C to the left 5 units. That sounds right. All right, check. And we're good. All right, 2 more of these. Okay, so this one, again, it just looks like I took a figure and I just, so figure A to B, it looks like I just took it and I scooted it down. That's all it looks like I did. They do, in fact, look like the same size and shape, so yes. And I'm scooting it down, so let's see if we start on this corner. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm translating it down 6 units. So translate figure A down 6 units. All right, so for this one, it doesn't look like a reflection. It doesn't look like I scooted it, but it does look a little bit like I turned it. So I just went whoop and I turned it. And I only turned it 1 time. So I went 90 degrees like this. 180, they'd be a little bit more diagonal looking at each other like this. Okay, but 90 degrees, it looks kind of like a corner here, just a little bit. So these do look like the same size and shape. And I rotated it 90 degrees. Let's see. I want to make sure I'm clicking the right one. Counterclockwise. So I'm going backwards on a clock because I'm going this way, and that's counterclockwise. So I'd go to the bottom here. I rotate figure C counterclockwise 90 degrees. Check. And if you're having trouble with this one, and maybe you kind of skipped ahead to this one or anything like that, I would definitely go back and try to do the other ones where you're learning about all these transformations. Or you can always go back and watch the videos that I created for the other ones just to make sure you understand how all these different transformations work. Because this one is a little bit different. You have to picture it in your head a little bit more. All right, so figure A to B. So that one looks like I took A and I whoop, flipped it over. And they are the same size and shape. So they are congruent. And let's see, I'm 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So what I was doing is I was counting. This one's 3 units to the left of the y-axis, and this one is 3 units to the right. So the y-axis is my flip line. So that's like if I were to fold it, the y-axis would be exactly where I fold it. So I know that I reflected the figure A, over the y-axis. So in this one, if you notice, this one's 3 tall, and this one is 1, 2, 3, 4 tall. And I can kind of see that right away. Those are not congruent shapes. So I'm going to click no and none. Check. All right, we're good to go. We finished it. Yay!